Welcome back. In this video we're going to look at a revised assignment 2. Let's quickly have a look at what was in this assignment. If you'll remember, it was a login page. We hard-coded the pass-through so that you go to some other pages. So we're going to change that so that we actually hit a database. So for starters, I'm going to go to my folder. I'm going to grab assignment 2, I'm going to copy and paste it. And I am going to call it Assign02 Revised. From there, I'm going to come to Dreamweaver. We've got our Assign02 Revised there. I am working locally, which means I'll be pushing them up to the server again this time. So what I want to open is the index page, the login page, and that's really most of what we're doing is going to be in the login page here. I want to go ahead and push up the index page. And page 1, because we'll use that later, just so we know it's there. Inside of the login page, remember we had these 3 different examples of how you can validate login and password. I'm going to get rid of the bottom 2. We'll actually probably wind up getting rid of the top one as well, but let's get this down to some code that we can live with. So you'll remember that we've got a login and a password box. If you want to have a quick look, we had an index page that had a login and a password box, and so we're going to actually check this against a database this time. Now, if you come back to the course website, on the course website somewhere there's a link called connection string, and it may be right here. It is right now. It may be elsewhere, but you're looking for the one that's called connection string. When I go to that, it's just a plain text file, and it has 2 different versions of how you can connect to a database. You'll see right here this splits up the 2 versions. They both work the same way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the top half. You could copy the whole thing if you want, because the bottom half is commented out, as you can see there. So I'm going to grab the top half of that, and I'm going to come back to this so it's ready for me. And in login.php, this is our pass-through page. I'm going to paste all of that content there, and this is what we're going to work with. So basically I've given you an example to follow for connecting to the database to try and make it easier. This first line here, MySQL pconnect, this is going to make your connection to the database. This first variable that you have is the location of the database. Now what we are working with in this video is a MySQL database that is on the same server as my PHP files. So because of that, we're going to leave this as localhost. Localhost means same server, this server you're currently on. Your ID is going to be something like CGT 356 web number letter. So whatever you have for the course, that's what you're going to be using. Or if you're using a different MySQL, it would be whatever you have for that account. I'll fill mine out. This is the database instance that I am using. If we go down to that next line, this is the name of the database. Now for this class, the name of the database is the same as your login name. So for you it would be something like this. For me, it is this. And lastly, you have your password. So whatever your password is for the course, or the password that you're using. And I'm going to pause this. I'm going to insert my password and scroll that off to the left a little bit. So now I've got MySQL pconnect set up, my login name, my password, which is off the screen, my database instance that I have there. And now that you've done that, we can connect to the database. So we're working with a MySQL database. We're using PHP MyAdmin to access MySQL. and I'll go ahead and log into mine. So you'll see in my database, if I come out here to localhost again and see everything that's out there, I've got all of the databases for the course. I'm using my local database here, so I'll choose it. And what we're going to use for this login is actually the P1 user table from Project 1. So if we come back and we go to Project 1, and in Project 1 there is a SQL file, and so I'll go to that script. It's a plain text file, and all I want is this P1 user table. So I'm going to grab the create statement there for the P1 user table. I'm going to copy it. I'll come back over to here, go to the SQL tab, and paste it. Once you've pasted it in there, just hit go. Now mine's not going to run because I already have a P1 user table. Yours would run, of course. And then in your P1 user table you need to insert some information. And so if you need to insert some information into that table, you can just do the insert tab and you can insert some values. So let's create a new one. And yes, I would love to receive the newsletter. We'll hit go there. That added it. If I click on P1 user again, here's the new one that I added. So you can add something to work with there. Now that we have our database table set up, we have some data in it to work with, we can now begin to look at the code and alter the code so that it will work with our connection. Looking down here, after these top two lines that we've already talked about, we have an if statement. It checks to see if our connection to the database worked. If it did not work, then we're going to echo out an error and exit this script. So it's just going to stop processing right there. Nothing below will be executed. Now 99.9% of the time this is just a check and we go right past it because everything will be working for us. The next line is a select statement that we store into a variable called SQL. We are going to alter this SQL statement just a little bit so that we can use that P1 user table. So you'll remember that the name of the table was P1 user, and we need to use a column that is in that table. So let's come back here, and I'm going to choose the first name column to start off with. That's not the one we're going to choose in a minute, but for right now I'm going to choose first name. And so I have select distinct first name from P1 user, and I want to use this to look at the word distinct, which is a SQL keyword. That first name column has to be used down here in row. Now we haven't talked about this just yet, but down here in row we need to use the column that was chosen in the SQL statement. So I changed title to first name here, so I'm going to change title to first name down here. Now we have our select statement stored into a variable called SQL. We take that SQL variable and we pass it into MySQL_query. MySQL query is a built-in PHP method that calls MySQL, passes it this select statement, and whatever it selects, the spreadsheet, the rows of data that it selects, comes back and it gets stored in this variable. You can think of this variable literally as a spreadsheet, as rows and columns in it. The next block here, we have an if-else statement. We check to see if any rows were actually selected. So it's possible that we did not get anything selected, in which case the result would be empty. There's no rows in our spreadsheet. So we set the number of results equal to 0. However, if we did get something selected, then we set the number of results equal to another built-in PHP method, MySQL_num_rows, and we pass it the result. So what happens is the spreadsheet goes to MySQL, it counts the number of rows in that spreadsheet and it stores that number into numResults. Then down here we have a for loop. The for loop says I equal to 0 as long as I is less than the number of results, the number of rows in that spreadsheet, increment I. Then we have a MySQL fetch array will return one row from the spreadsheet every time it's called. So we pass it the result, or the spreadsheet, and we get the next row. So the first time it gets the first row, the next time it's called it gets the second row, the next time it's called it gets the third row, and each time it stores it into this variable row. Then we use that variable row along with the name of the column in order to get the data out of that particular cell. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and save this file, and I'm going to push up login.php since I'm working locally here. I'm going to come back, and I need to do one other thing. I need to scroll down here, and I want to comment out these locations down at the bottom. I'll save that. I'm going to push up login once again. And now I can type anything. And let's come back to that keyword distinct. Remember that we said distinct first name, and so we're writing out the first name. If we come and look here, there are two uniquely different first names. And so distinct says only give me the unique ones. So if we get rid of that keyword distinct, we come back here and just delete it out of there, save it, publish it, refresh this page. Now it will list all of them. So that's a quick example of using distinct. We've got a successful connection to the database now. What we need to do is alter our SQL select statement so that it uses the username and password up above. Now for me, I'm going to delete this out just so I can fit more on the screen here. You can leave it in yours if you'd like. We need to use the user ID and the password here. But instead of selecting first name, I'm going to select login. So select login from P1 user where login equals something and passwd equals something. Now let's check our column names, login and passwd. We have login and passwd, so we're good there. P1 user, all lowercase here, so we're good there. Now we need to concatenate in our variable names. So in between these two single quotes, I'm going to put two double quotes. In between that, two periods, and in between that, passwd. We'll do it again to concatenate them together. Two double quotes, two periods, and user ID. Now what we have is a select statement that will return either one record or 0 records, because we are selecting based on the primary key, which is login. So if that does not work, if that does not exist, you'll get 0. If it does exist, then you'll get 1 record. I'm going to echo that SQL statement out just so we can look at it, and I'm going to add a line break onto it. I'll save that, push it up, and I'm going to refresh this page again. And now you'll see we've got select login from P1 user where login equals. We've got single quotes around it, and passwd equals. We've got single quotes around it. So it looks good. You'll notice the first name did not print here. I'll give you a second to realize why. It's because we changed this to select login, and down here we're still echoing out first name. So if I change that to login, it would list the logins out. So we have our SQL statement. I don't need this echo anymore. That's just for me to check it and make sure that it's written properly. I'm going to execute that against MySQL. I'm going to find out if I have a record or if I don't. And I'm going to condense this down to the shortest possible way to do this. We do not need this down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. We do not need this for loop. Get rid of that. Now I can either add another if-else statement or I can use this if-else statement. It doesn't really matter. Because we commonly use this if-else statement, I'm going to save it just so maybe it's a little more straightforward for you. So what I want to look at is if numResults is greater than 0. And there are different ways that you can write that. But if numResults is greater than 0, we're going to do a header redirect. If it is greater than 0, we want to go to page1.php. And you'll recall we uploaded that when we first started. Otherwise, we want to redirect back to the index page. Now you might say, well, you could go to an error page or what have you, but the most common thing is to go back to an index page. So the reality is we don't need both of these if-elses. I could replace this line with if it's empty, then we go back to here, and I could replace this line with this line and just have one if-else and it would work fine. Now, because we have a header redirect here, no matter what, we're getting redirected somewhere, which means this line will never execute. So we've got to cut it out and we've got to put it above that redirection. And let's go ahead and save that. We'll push that up. And now let's come back to our index page. And I'll use one of the logins and passwords that was in my database. And you'll see that I get redirected straight through to page1.php. Now if I come back and I type garbage here, I come back to this page, got redirected back. If I type a correct login and password though, I successfully get through to page 1. Once you have this working, you no longer need the separate pages to land on. Every single login is going to land on the same page. Now it's possible you can have different landing pages if you want to, but for your projects in this class, you'll log in, and if successful, you'll land on one page. So in our server environment, we've got 3 pages. We don't have the page 2, page 3, or error page. So that will take care of our login functionality and redirection based on a good login from the database. Now, just for kicks, since that didn't take very long, let's say we want to have a create new account page. Let's come to the index page. Again, I'd like to change this and make it not use tables. We've done that in our other assignments. For right now, I'm just gonna work with what's here. So let's put a div down here at the bottom that says create new account, and we'll add a style, text align, center it. And we'll make this an anchor tag that points to a new page that we're going to create. Whoops. And we'll call that create new account.php. Close that. Save that and push the index page up. Let's refresh that. Make sure that we have our new index page. We've got create new account there. Now we haven't created that page yet, so that's going to fail if we try it now. What I'm going to do is I think I'm going to copy one of our other assignments. So let's go to here. I'm going to go to assignment 3. I'm going to grab this index page and I'm going to copy it into my revised assignment 2. I no longer need these page 2 and page 3, so I'm going to delete those out of there. And I'm going to rename this to create new account. Once I've done that, I can come back to Dreamweaver, look in assignment 2, refresh it, and here's my create new account, which has my assignment 3 page in it. Now it's got way too much stuff in it for right now. We know for sure that we do not need this second field set, so I'm going to get rid of that. That's this one on the right hand side. Let's come back into our P1 user table and see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. So we need to collect 6 pieces of data. Back into Dreamweaver. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So name, address, city, state, zip, country, we'll change all of those. But I'm just going to reduce it down. And then that button, I suppose we can leave the same for now. I'm going to change this legend. And change our action. It will go to do create account.php. We'll have to create that page as well. So let's go ahead and save that and let's push it up. Come back here and click this link and see what it looks like. So it's off center. We could go adjust the CSS if we want, but let's work with what we have here for right now. We'll start by making each of these match our column names in here. So my first one I'm going to have is login. I think I'll go ahead and do first name, then last name. Then I'll do password. And we have email address. And finally newsletter. And then, so these are the titles, the tooltips that are going to pop up. Next, these need to match the IDs that we're going to use. So the IDs that we're going to use, I'll keep them all with capital first letters in this example. So let's just copy across. So I'll copy this, it's going to go there. And let's go all the way over here to the input tag. Name and ID equals, whoops, and ID equals. Now let's come back. We're going to do first name, put that in the for, which has to match the ID over here, has to match there. Grab the last name. And now we're going to wind up adding one more field in here once I finish this. So I've gone ahead and finished laying those out. I had a bad copy there though, I see. So the black words here, those are the words that are going to be displayed on the page. But for password, we can't just have them enter the password one time. We need to have them enter it twice. And then we'll have to compare that. So on this one, we'll have confirm password, and you can call this whatever you'd like. I'm going to put confirm after it. And we'll change each of these all the way across, just as we did before. Now, the two password ones, type equal text becomes type equal password. And let's go ahead and save this and have a look at it. So now you can see how it's being laid out. We need to move that submit button up so that it's closer there. So we can probably approach that one of two ways. Let's look at the CSS and see where it's being positioned. Field set submit is what's being positioned, so let's just grab that input and let's cut it out of there, and let's add it to this one up here. We'll get rid of that field set and see how that looks. So if we come over here, we'll see the proceed button gets placed here, which is fine for no more than we're doing. Our goal is just to make it work, go through an example. We might change the word proceed to create new account. And we've got this document.getElementById name, which no longer exists, so we want to put it into login. So we're going to change that here to login. And now when we refresh that screen, hopefully we should have a cursor blinking in that first spot. There we go. You can also see the CSS change it a little bit. We are pretty close to being ready to work on the next page. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. Now there's a lot that we could change in here. Like this ID should be changed, but again, just doing this as an example. I'll get rid of those two because we're not using them. I'm just going to push it over so it's a little bit more centered. Refreshed it at just the wrong time there. So now let's go ahead and work on that next page. So we need another pass-through page that's not going to be all that different from this login page. So let's actually start by using that one, and let's copy and paste it. And we were going to call that do create account. And we'll refresh our local files and open that page. So now I need to modify this to make it work. We need to grab more than just these two here. So coming back to look at this once again, we need to grab login, first name, last name, password, password confirm, email, and newsletter. So we're going to have a variable login, a variable pass WD, which I will leave like that. On the other page it is password, and on the other page it is login. We have a password confirm. We need the first name and the last name. On the previous page, what they are named. And again, you'll remember that these here refer to the name equals on the previous page. We also have an email address. And I think just newsletter. Is that all? Log in, first name, last name, password confirm, and then newsletter. Now before we add the newsletter though, let's come back here, and instead of making the newsletter type in answer, let's make it so that it's a checkbox. It's either a yes or a no. So we'll come back here, input type equal text on the newsletter element. Whoops, and we'll do type equal checkbox, and that'll change that one for us. Now because it's got checkbox, there's no size or max length there. If we save that and let's push that up. Now we've got a checkbox, and we should probably position that a little bit differently, but again, that's CSS that you can play with. Now that we've done that, we'll come back over here so that we can grab that value. So to grab that, we'll do something similar to these others, but it's going to have to be a little bit different because of the nature of a checkbox. So we can say newsletter equals like this. But if newsletter is not checked, let's go ahead and let's do an echo $newsletter, and let's exit this right here. So we can test this page. I'm going to send this one up. Then we'll come and look at this. If we leave newsletter unchecked and hit create new, we get an error. The reason is if newsletter is not checked, then it does not get sent to the next page, which I know is kind of hokey, I guess. So what we need to do is check to see if not empty the posted newsletter. If it's not empty, do this, and otherwise set another value. That other value I'll choose is off. Let's save this and post it up. Let's refresh this. Unchecked, submit, we're fine, it prints off. Come back, check it, submit, it prints on, we're fine. So we got rid of our crashing error there. These two lines I'm going to get rid of. So now we've grabbed all of our variables coming across here, and we can go ahead and continue to change the rest of the page. Now one of the next things we'll want to do is compare the two passwords together. We may want to check and make sure that none of these have been left blank. So we're going to need some if statements in here. And I suppose one thing we should do before we move forward is help protect ourselves against some attacks. So on each one of these, I'm going to use strip slashes. And all that's going to do is escape special characters if they are used. Whenever you ask somebody to type something into a text box, you are asking hackers to try and test your pages. If you use strip slashes, it's a simple mechanism that will escape any special characters and help prevent anything from going awry. Now, let's go down to an if statement, and let's check to see if the first password and the second password are equal to each other. So we'll check to see if password is equal to password confirm. If it is, then we're not going to do anything. If it's not, however, then we probably want to set an error message and send it back. So we'd probably start using the session at this point. And we can set that error message equal to your passwords do not match. And at that point we would do a header. Location back to create new account.php, followed by an exit so that we stop processing. We're sure that we stop processing. Now this says if they are equal, so we want to check we basically want to say if they're not equal. So we'll change that to a not equal. So if the first password is not equal to the second password, they don't match, let's send them back and have them do something about that. Next, we'd probably want to check and see if any of these up here are empty, because that's going to potentially affect our insert statement. So let's do another if statement, and inside of that let's check to see if login is equal to the empty string, or, and I'm going to group these together, password, password confirm, first name, last name, or email. And so we need to go through these. So I've finished changing those variable names. If any of those are empty, we want to do something similar here once again. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here. But we're going to change our error message to something like please fill out all of the form elements. And we'll redirect them back with that error message. Now before we can insert it into the database, we need to check and make sure that that login ID does not already exist. So this part up here we're going to leave the same. We do need a select statement. So select login from P1 user where login equals. We don't need this and a password equals though, so I'm gonna get rid of that. But instead of user ID, we have changed that to login. And so we're looking to see, does that login exist? We execute it against here. We look to see if there is 0 or 1 result. And in this location here, it's if the number of results is greater than 0, that means that yes, this login already exists. And we need to redirect them back again with an error message saying, hey, you need to choose a different login. So we'll do error message. That login ID already exists. We'll redirect them back, and we don't need this else statement here. So now we've added yet another check, seeing if that login exists. We're actually ready to formulate our insert statement at this point. So we're going to reuse that SQL variable and start making our insert statement. Insert into P1 user. We always list the column names, add the keyword values, and now our column names are login, first name, last name, pass WD, email, and newsletter. And we can check back here real quick to make sure that newsletter has a capital L, so we'll want to make sure we hit that. Now that we have that, we're ready to concatenate in our values. So let's come back here once again, and let's look at the structure of this table. P1 user structure. Oh. So again, P1 user structure. Characters, characters, characters. All of them are characters. The reason I looked at that was to determine whether or not I needed single quotes everywhere. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns, which means I need 6 values that I'm going to insert. So what I'm going to do to start is single quote, there's my first value, comma space, there's my second value, third, fourth, whoops, and that makes 6. So now I've got places to put all 6 of my values. I need to concatenate in all of those variables from up above. So login, password, first name, last name, and email, and newsletter. So I'll come down here to this, and I'm going to start at the right. 2 double quotes, 2 periods, newsletter. 2 double quotes, 2 periods, email. In between these 2 double quotes, 2 periods. Keep forgetting that. In between this one, 2 double quotes, 2 periods. In between this one, 2 double quotes, 2 periods, and finally login. That finishes our insert statement. Now that's pretty long, so I think we should check it. So we'll just do a simple echo of our SQL statement to check it. Now all we should have to do is make sure we fill out all of the form elements, so we don't leave any empty. Make sure our password and password confirms match, and make sure we don't choose something that's already in the database, and we should be able to test this. So let's push this up. We'll come over here, and I'm just going to type QWERTY, and I'm going to paste it into all of these. We see we've got a problem right here. Insert into P1 user, my column names, value, oh I'm missing an S right there, QWERTY, comma, everything there looks fine. Let's add that S before we forget. Now, there was a problem with the email. The email is set to max length of 5 and size of 7. That's not going to help us out very much. So let's set it to 40, and we'll just put a 4 in front of that. And actually what we should do is come over here. Email is set to size 40, so we shouldn't set it any larger than that. So I'll set this to 40 as well. We'll save that. We've got to push create new account back up. We'll save this. It should be ready to go. We'll push it up again, but now let's verify our checks that we have in place. So we'll come back here, and if we choose something that's already in there, I know that this login is already in there, and it doesn't matter what I put here as long as they match. I came back to this same page. I didn't make it to the next page. So I should have an error message, but I haven't put that into this page yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Come back to create new account. Go up to the top. My first line is going to be session start. And then we're going to move down, and we need a place to put our error message at. We're just going to put it in between the form fields and the submit button. I'm going to start with an if not empty. Echo and then we'll throw this inside of that not empty, and let's save that and move it back up. Refresh this page. We see that login ID already exists. I'm not going to play around with that anymore. We have other videos that show you, using CSS to color that in placement, as well as setting it equal to null so that it doesn't appear on other pages. But at least we know that our checks are working. So I'm going to leave it as is for right now. Now the passwords, let's do that check as well. And I'll type two different things here. We get redirected back. Your passwords don't match, and let's leave it blank. And please fill out all the form elements. So all of our checks are working properly. That's great. We've got our insert statement here. We've checked it. It looks pretty good. And now what we've got to do is execute this and get it inserted into the database. So let's copy this and paste that there. This line right here you're going to have to move, otherwise it's going to fail. So I'm going to cut that out and move it to the bottom of the page here. And once we've done this, you've basically got a choice to make. You can either send them to the login page and force them to use the login, or you can send them to page 1 because they just created an account. I'm going to go ahead and send them to the login page. And force them to use that, and it'll be good so that we can show that as well. So I'll save that. We have an insert statement executed. We'll close the database after the execution and redirect. Let's see what happens. So let's create a new account. I'll use QWERTY. And create new. It sent me back here. So now I've got to use my login and my password, if I can remember it. Let's do QWERTY and QWERTY, and we get through to the alpha page. If we come over here and refresh this, we'll see that we've got our new login with the information that we put. Now we need to make an adjustment on the newsletter. It looks like the value should be yes or no. So instead of inserting on and off, we should make that change in our code. If we come back here, that's in this if-else statement. So if it's off, it's going to be no. But this one is if it's not empty, we don't actually want the value. We'll just put yes in there, and that's going to fix that problem. So now let's tidy this up a little bit. That error message, we'll make it go away so that it's not persistent. If we get this far in our code, we don't have any errors, so we'll go ahead and clear that out. And likewise, once we get past this and we get to the bottom of this page, we don't have any problems. We don't want that to continue to crop up over and over and over again. So I'm going to save those two things. That'll make that disappear a little bit. If we come up here, we just need to add some color to the span. Let's just add a span on there. That'll change it to red. And let's go ahead and make font weight bold. And let's push those two changes up. Refresh, create new account. Refresh that page. That error message is gone now. So we'll see that these are there. Let's click this. So now we've got a bold one. We could probably center it, but oh well. Now at this point, one of the next things we need to do is validation. Let me check here and see if there's any other little pieces we need to tidy up. There's one other piece that that we can add. These passwords, since we're at a point in the semester where we can start doing this. The passwords are stored in the database as plain text, and that's never good. So if your database is stolen, then suddenly your passwords are out there. So any of our sensitive information, we typically want to use MD5 to encrypt. In PHP it's a one-way encryption. What we can do is come up here to these password and password confirms, and instead of strip slashes, we can put MD5 in front of it, and that's going to turn it into ciphertext. The rest can stay the same. Let's go ahead and save that and push it up. And you'll get this in another assignment as well, but we'll go ahead and do it here too. So both of these will be ciphertext that'll be unrecognizable, and down here it'll compare the first cipher to the second cipher. It'll function just the same. But let's go ahead and actually create a new account now. And I will type once again QWERTY, and again QWERTY. The email, it's not my real email address. Create new account. We get back here, and now for the login we're going to have to change that page. But let's come over here and refresh this and look at the password that was inserted. Now I told you that I typed QWERTY, and QWERTY got ciphered into this using MD5. So in order for that to work for us now, we've got to make one other change. We'll come back here, and we go to login, and we've grabbed this value here, but in order to use it, we've got to send it to MD5 on the login screen. So now this page will work just fine. If I save this and I push login back up, and I come back to this screen and I typed QWERTY there, hit login, I went through just fine. Now the downside of my doing this in this example is that I need to delete all of these. These are not going to work now. So I can either change it back to not use MD5 and these will work fine and I need to delete that one, or I can continue to use MD5 and I need to delete all of these. So one way or the other. But in the future you're going to be doing MD5 all the time. So that's one last thing. Now let's go ahead and check our pages for validation. We're in Firefox. The Firefox browser has some add-ons that we've been using, and so we're on the index page to start, and we want to look down here in the bottom right hand corner, and I'm going to bring this up into view a little better. Bottom right hand corner, I mouse over it and you'll see that we've got 0 errors and 0 warnings. That's what we want on this page. We double click it and we get the source to pop up, and if there are any errors they'd be down here. You'd click on the error, it would highlight in the text. So this page seems to be alright. Let's go to create new account, and it looks like we are fine there as well. Let's also come up here. We also want to look at these. These are our error. This is our error console. So if you bring any of these up, you can look at the errors and find those in your code as well, but they are all green checks, so we're good to go there. So the pages that we have created all validate as we would expect them to, and you need to check that for every assignment to make sure that you're writing code properly. If you do not write code properly and this does not validate, you're going to lose points on it. So you may as well make sure you've got the green checks before you turn it in. That gets us through a revision of assignment 2. We've connected to the database successfully. We've done it. We've done a couple of different things, and using that, you remember that I gave you the starting point for connecting to the database. You can copy that from a plain text script there, and we'll be connecting with the database for the rest of the semester. So I'll see you in the next video.